And to begin with, the Senate has lost a giant, a champion, a former member of this committee, who, though he went on to other jurisdictions, was one of the strongest advocates for American strength and American partnerships around the world, and peace through strength. And that's the late Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. And so I'd ask all of us to bow our heads for a moment of silence in memory of Senator Graham. Thank you very much. Mr. Ranking Member and fellow members of the committee, since a quorum is now present, we will ask the committee to consider a list of 2,274 pending military nominations. All of these nominations have been before the committee the required length of time. Mr. Ranking Member, is there a motion to report these 2,274 pending military nominations to the Senate favorably?
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you all, and this executive session is now adjourned. And welcome to our distinguished visitors and their families. I thank them for being here and for their willingness to serve their country. The Honorable Jay Hurst has been nominated to serve as the Pentagon's Controller and Chief Financial Officer. If confirmed, he will be responsible for working with Deputy Secretary Feinberg to develop the defense budget. He would oversee financial management and lead the department's effort to achieve a clean financial statement audit by the end of 2028. As we work toward a total defense top line of $1.5 trillion, a figure I have strongly endorsed, we'll need an adept controller. This person will manage a complex funding approach, one that combines base, discretionary appropriations, and mandatory reconciliation dollars. I note that some members of this committee have concerns with the reconciliation process. Excuse me. Some of those concerns are normal. They've been shared by members of both parties as the party in power used reconciliation to achieve party line goals. But other concerns, again from colleagues on both sides of the aisle, have been about the lack of information on reconciliation from the Pentagon. I acknowledge that there were problematic delays in apportionment and decision-making through the end of calendar year 2025. However, I think there has been a significant improvement in execution and information flow over the past 6 months, and I credit Mr. Hurst for his work on that front. We are not yet where we need to be, but we're headed in the right direction. So I think the committee is going to appreciate Mr. Hurst's commitment to continue providing all members of this committee with a full and free flow of information. Mr. Matt O'Malley has been nominated to serve as Deputy Under Secretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. If confirmed, he will be responsible for helping the department as it implements the Forged Act, strengthens cooperation with allied and partner industrial bases, and rebuilds American supply chains. The central challenge facing the Pentagon is not only producing more of what we already have, but also fundamentally changing the way the department acquires and sustains capabilities. The United States must do so if we hope to prevail in a protracted fight against a peer adversary. We must harness the innovation of our private sector by moving the defense acquisition strategy to a commercial-first approach. I look forward to hearing how Mr. O'Malley intends to drive that change. Dr. Eric Hernandez Baquero has been nominated to serve as the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration. In this role, he will act as an acquisition executive and as a senior architect for space systems across the Department of the Air Force. He will be responsible for delivering combat-ready space systems to the Joint Force and for integrating those weapons with commercial capabilities. The President's budget proposes to more than double Space Force investments in the coming fiscal year. Dr. Hernandez Baquero would also be responsible for stewarding the Space Force's sweeping transition to a new portfolio acquisition executive structure. I'm interested in how the Pentagon will continue to make our national security space capabilities resilient and proliferated, helping them face both kinetic and electronic attacks. And then Dr. Roger Mason has been nominated to serve as director of the National Reconnaissance Office. In this role, he will lead the acquisition, launch, and operation of the nation's space-based reconnaissance systems. These systems provide critical imagery, signals, and other information to the Department of Defense and to the intelligence community. If confirmed, Dr. Mason would help lead the office as it enters a new phase of intelligence data collection. The number of government and commercial satellites continues to grow rapidly. Consequently, we are collecting a dramatically increasing volume of data. We must use artificial intelligence effectively if we hope to manage, analyze, and deliver intelligence from these rapidly growing data sets. The nominee will also have to balance expanding commercial partnerships against the need to protect our most sensitive technologies and capabilities from our adversaries. So we look forward to hearing how Dr. Mason intends to meet these demands. With that, I welcome our witnesses and our guests, and I turn to my friend and colleague, Ranking Member Jack Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And before I make comments about today's hearing, I too want to recognize Lindsey Graham. Lindsey was a unique personality. I had the privilege of serving with him in the House, and then later he joined us in the Senate. He was an articulate, relentless advocate for our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and guardians. Many reasons for that. One is he himself served as an Air Force officer. He was the personification of a passionate patriot, and we miss him a great deal. Mr. Chairman, thank you again. Good morning to our witnesses. Congratulations on your nominations. I'd like to welcome you and your family members that are here. Mr. Hirsch, you are nominated to be Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller. You have been performing the duties of this position since August of last year. If confirmed, you would be the first Senate-confirmed Comptroller in this administration. This committee cannot conduct meaningful oversight of more than $1 trillion of defense budget without a comptroller who is direct, forthcoming, and accountable to Congress. At this moment of financial issues in the department, some of the data is, let me say, unclear. Mr. Hirsch, you testified in April that the cost of the Iran war had reached $31 billion, but acknowledged that figure did not include battle damage, which is likely to be tens of billions of dollars. And I would ask for an updated accounting today. We have also received a supplemental request totaling $87.6 billion, of which $67.1 billion is for the Department of Defense. But not all of the funding is directly related to the operational cost of Operation Epic Fury. And I have serious questions about the details of that request, and I would appreciate more information. Similarly, the Department's FY 2027 budget request assumed an additional $350 billion in reconciliation funding for barracks repair and munitions and aircraft procurement, among other priorities. In my view, the outlook for another reconciliation bill is very dubious. Mr. Hurst, I want to know the Department's plan if that funding does not materialize. I would note that last year's reconciliation bill provided $150 billion to the Department of Defense and the National Nuclear Security Administration, but as of earlier this month, only $67.5 billion has been obligated. This committee needs to know whether the department intends to obligate the remainder of that funding before September 30th, and I expect a firm commitment to receive regular updates on obligation rates going forward. Finally, on DHS reimbursements, since October 2025, the Department of Defense has provided more than $2 billion in support to the Department of Homeland Security. However, DHS has not reimbursed a dollar of that money, and the impact on military training rotations, exercises, and personnel accounts is significant and growing. I would ask for a clear answer on when you expect that reimbursement to arrive and how the department is mitigating the impacts in the meantime. Mr. O'Malley, you are nominated to be Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. This position has broad responsibilities for delivering timely and cost-effective capabilities to our warfighters, maintaining those capabilities over many decades, supervising the defense industrial base, and overseeing the modernization of our nuclear forces. It is a demanding job that requires extensive experience in the acquisition field. And I'm concerned that your background, primarily as an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserves and in investment management, does not provide adequate experience for this position. I would like to explain how you plan to prepare for this role. The multi-year procurement negotiations currently underway for key munitions are among the most consequential acquisition decisions the Department faces, and I'd like to understand your approach to accelerating munitions production, as well as your ideas for incentivizing industry to contribute more of their own resources to delivering these systems in greater numbers at speed. Dr. Mason, you are nominated to be the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office. Your background as the Assistant Director of National Intelligence for Systems and Resource Analysis should give you important familiarity with NRO's mission. The NRO is at an inflection point. For most of its history, the agency's primary customers were the National Security Agency and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. That is changing. The retirement of the Air Force's JSTARS aircraft has shifted the air and ground moving target indication mission primarily to the Space Force using proliferated satellites, and the NRO is now acquiring most of those systems on the Space Force's behalf. This is a significant expansion of the NRO's traditional role, and it raises real questions about mission focus and institutional identity. I want to understand how you would manage the NRO's acquisition role while ensuring the Space Force retains the command and acquisition authority the law requires, and what priorities you have for NRO in this rapidly evolving environment. Finally, Dr. Hernandez Baquero, you are nominated to be Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration. Your experience in optical sciences and your experience at the NRO will serve you well in this role. However, I want to make sure your nomination will not create any perceived conflict of interest due to your previous employment, which overlaps much of the same Space Force ISR acquisition portfolio you would now supervise. Indeed, the Space Force's ISR budget is growing from $7 billion last year to $12 billion this year, nearly all of it in reconciliation funding. That is a significant area of exposure, and I want to understand how you've divested yourself and the recusal plans you have going forward. In addition, I'd like to know your thoughts on this committee's longstanding concern about SpaceX's near monopoly position in launch and proliferated satellite constellations, and how you ensure we have competition in these areas. Thank you again to our nominees, and I look forward to your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And with that, we will begin our opening statements. We'll go left to right. Mr. Hurst, your opening statement, sir.
Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the Armed Services Committee. Let me start by acknowledging the late Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Senator Graham was a patriot. He devoted his life to service and was a tireless advocate for America's service members and our national defense. I pray that God comforts his loved ones during their time of grief. It is an honor to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee to be the Undersecretary of War, Comptroller, and Chief Financial Officer. I'm grateful to the President, Secretary Hegseth, and Deputy Secretary Feinberg for their confidence and for the opportunity to serve. I'm also grateful to my wife, Elizabeth, and our 5 children, Henry, Charlotte, Victoria, Augustine, and George, for their love and support. Beth has learned more about the department's personnel policies and PPB than I suspect she's ever wanted to learn, but she tells me she enjoys it. She's an incredible wife and mother. My family and I continue to owe the U.S. military an enormous debt. My grandfather, Sugar, attended college on the GI Bill after serving as a Marine NCO during the Korean War. My father, Sonny, provided my sister and I a middle-class upbringing as an Air Force officer, and I was fortunate enough to attend the College of William & Mary on an Army ROTC scholarship. Our military service made each of us better people, better fathers, and better citizens. Over the last 2 decades, I've been blessed with a great variety of assignments, from the JSOC Intelligence Brigade to the Office of the Speaker of the House. I've held an equal variety of positions in this administration. Since January 2025, I performed the duties of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, the Assistant Secretary for Readiness, and the Undersecretary Comptroller. I now serve as the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs. These positions are united by a common thread: my desire to improve the department as an institution to better protect the American people. If confirmed as Undersecretary Comptroller, I will focus on 3 main priorities. First, the department must pass a clean financial statement audit by 2028. We must prove our fiscal responsibility to the American people. As the PTDO Comptroller, I advanced a new audit strategy, helped create the Joint Task Force audit, and hired an incredible audit leadership team. If confirmed, I will continue this work with the talented service comptrollers to drive towards a clean opinion. We will focus our resources on the largest vulnerabilities in our financial statements and apply artificial intelligence to expedite testing as we consolidate systems and apply controls. Second, the department must continue to construct budgets that align with the ongoing evolutions in warfare and continue expanding our industrial base. As we build 6th-generation aircraft, we must also place equivalent bets on affordable mass, autonomous platforms, and EW, space, and cyber systems. The fielding and integration of manned and unmanned systems and high and low-cost platforms is critical to our operational success. Third, I will focus on improving financial management systems and processes across the department. The Department of War manages one of the most complex financial enterprises in the world. We must consolidate resource planning tools, establish data standards, and create systems to see resource distributions in real time to improve decision-making. If confirmed, I commit to continuing a full-court press to achieve a clean financial statement opinion in 2028, budgeting for the evolving character of warfare, and modernizing our financial systems and processes. Thank you for the honor of being here today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurst. Mr. O'Malley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and please allow me to pass along my condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Senator Lindsey Graham. May the perpetual light shine upon him. Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of this committee, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and for your consideration of my nomination to serve as Deputy Undersecretary of War for Acquisition and Sustainment. I'm deeply grateful to President Trump, Vice President Vance, and Secretary Egseth for honoring me with this nomination. I also wish to extend my profound thanks to the Honorable Undersecretary Michael Duffy for his leadership, trust, and support. If confirmed, it will be the privilege of a lifetime to support him in a role so critical to the department's mandate to rebuild our military and revitalize our defense industrial base. I would not be sitting before you today without the unwavering support of God and my family. Many thanks to my wife, Carrie, and our children, Ella, Shayna, Raleigh, Jake, and Grant. I grew up working on my family's tree farm in Wisconsin. On that farm, I learned the value of hard work, resilience, and stewardship, principles that have guided my career ever since. To go from planting trees in those fields to sitting before this esteemed committee is a testament to the exceptional promise of this country. It is a trajectory that can truly only happen in America. My career has been defined by a relentless focus on the intersection of national security and technology. For over 2 decades, I've served as an enlisted intelligence specialist and intelligence officer in the United States Navy Reserve. In that capacity, I have gained firsthand knowledge of the threat confronting our service members from Iraq and Syria to the European Command. Concurrently, as a small business owner, I founded Looking Glass Investments, a firm leveraging big data and machine learning to create complex risk models. Leading this specialized enterprise gave me a deep practical understanding of how advanced data analytics can solve intractable problems. It also taught me the real-world hurdles that innovative vendors face when attempting to navigate complex requirements to deliver cutting-edge solutions. In government, I've had the privilege of serving in key advisory roles. Prior to serving in my current capacity as Senior Advisor to the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment, which I began in March of this year, I served as Special Assistant to the Secretary of War. In that role, I was honored to support the Secretary's nationwide Arsenal Freedom Tour. We traveled from the shipyards of our coasts to the aerospace facilities and factories of our heartland. What was most gratifying for me was meeting the men and women of our defense industrial base, the true lifeblood of our national defense. In every engagement, I had the opportunity to convey Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Duffy's primary charge to the department: deliver integrated capabilities to our warfighters quickly and at scale. As Secretary Hegseth has established, we are on a war footing. We must restore the warrior ethos, rebuild our military, and reestablish deterrence. We face a highly competitive strategic environment. We are engaged in a high-stakes competition with adversaries who possess both advanced capabilities and the massive industrial base required to produce them. Under President Trump's leadership, we have the blueprint to meet this challenge. Executive Order 14265 mandates that we modernize acquisitions and spur innovation, recognizing that a robust factory floor is a critical enabler of battlefield success. If confirmed, I will aggressively support the ongoing transition to a dynamic warfighting acquisition system, ensuring we field technology at a rate that outpaces our adversaries. To achieve this, we must also prioritize the warfighter in all defense contracting, consistent with Executive Order 14372. If confirmed, I will work to ensure our supply chains are highly resilient and that capital is effectively managed. These executive actions are essential, and their impact is greatly enhanced by the legislative partnership of this committee. I want to thank the Chairman and the Congress for your vital leadership in passing the Forged Act. The Department is already utilizing this critical legislation to recapitalize our manufacturing base, secure our supply chains, and revitalize the defense workforce. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with this committee to maximize the authorities granted by the Forged Act to continue building our industrial strength. If confirmed, I pledge to work closely and transparently with you. I will be fully accountable to the President, the Secretary, the Congress, and the American people to resource our military arsenal with urgency and precision. Thank you for your time and for your consideration of my nomination. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Dr. Mason, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to begin by expressing my sympathy to the members of this committee for the loss of your friend and colleague, Senator Graham. Senator Graham was a stalwart for the defense intelligence enterprise, and his leadership will be deeply missed. Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to consider my nomination to be the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office. I want to thank President Trump and Secretary Hegseth for their trust and confidence in me to return to government service and fulfill this important national security position. Family is my bedrock, and I'm grateful beyond words for their support, their sacrifice, and unconditional love. First, I want to thank my parents, who instilled in me the importance of being accountable, the value of hard work, and the promise of education. I'm most grateful to my remarkable wife of 30 years, Colleen. She inspires me every day and sets the example of selfless service to our family. Together, we're incredibly proud of our three children, John, Joseph, and Caroline, who are just now beginning their own lives based on those same values. I was born only a few miles from here in Alexandria, Virginia, and have since been a lifelong resident of Virginia. Growing up, my parents pressed the importance of education with my sister and I, and we became first-generation college graduates. For me, applying science to solve hard problems was the passion for learning. This drive resulted in earning a PhD in engineering physics from the University of Virginia, which gave me a strong base to begin a career in national security. In my first job after graduate school, I led teams to develop and deploy remote sensors into a global system linked by satellites for national security missions. Simply put, I fell in love with the mission and devoted the next 32 years of my career serving it in both industry and government. Over these 3 decades, I honed my leadership experience, skills, and abilities to enable me to bring the right leadership at this moment in time to the National Reconnaissance Office. As president of a space and intelligence business, I led a multi-billion-dollar organization with over 4,500 employees that provided advanced manufacturing, products, services, and solutions for every phase of space-based missions. I was honored to serve as the first Assistant Director of National Intelligence for Systems and Resource Analysis, driving strategic capability investments, developing intelligence requirements, and conducting independent cost estimates on every major system acquisition. In that role, I gained valuable insight across all intelligence missions, from the strategic to the tactical, from counterterrorism to foreign military combat capabilities, and everything in between. Today marks an incredibly exciting time for space, not seen since the NRO began the dawn of space intelligence in the 1960s. We are in a space renaissance, where the pace of technology advancement, the speed of innovation, and the promise of the future has drawn unprecedented investments from many sectors. The future of space and how our nation can use it for good seems limitless. Today, the NRO embarks on a new journey to fundamentally change how space-based intelligence is done. The future of space, however, is also contested. Adversaries are in a race to build their own capabilities, including counter-space measures capable of denying our nation's critical space missions. If confirmed, my priorities will focus on elevating NRO's strengths and emphasizing three major areas. The first, accelerate the next-gen space architecture that integrates proliferated and exquisite capabilities to produce integrated intelligence data at mission speed. The second, enable NRO to push the leading edge of space technology and innovate even faster. And the third, ensure enterprise-wide resilience from space vehicles to the ground and everything that connects the agency. These priorities will only be achieved with a vibrant, mission-focused workforce and critical strategic partnerships. The NRO workforce is the heartbeat of the organization and demands the full attention of its leadership to attract, develop, grow, and retain its world-class talent. To deliver success, NRO's strategic partnerships with the military, intelligence agencies, and our allies are essential. And we must continue to work closely with an expanding industrial base. All of these relationships must be built with strong communications, transparent processes, and a spirit of problem solving. Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the committee, I conclude these remarks by giving you my commitment that, if confirmed, I will bring the very best of my energy and skills in service to the nation to lead the NRO with the strength it deserves and the future vision it demands. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. Dr. Hernandez-Becerra.
Good morning, Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of this committee. I want to first express my deepest sympathy to all who mourned the recent passing of Senator Lindsey Graham. As a fellow Air Force veteran, I am saddened to see him slip the surly bonds of earth and pray his last high flight brings him the joy of touching the face of God. Senator Graham's lifelong dedication to the nation sets a great example for those called to serve the cause of freedom. I thank this committee for the opportunity to appear before you to answer this call. If confirmed, I would be honored to serve as the second Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration. This opportunity is only possible by the grace of God and His divine providence. I humbly thank President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and Secretary Mink for their trust and confidence in me. I am eternally grateful to my family, friends, and colleagues who supported me through 36 years of military service in the Air Force and executive leadership in the space industry. Most especially, I thank my wife, Kimberly, and my sons, Curtis and Nathan, who deserve recognition for their steadfast love and patriotism. It is this love and patriotism that brings us here today. Our nation faces rapidly growing threats in and from space. Adversaries are increasing their anti-satellite capabilities, attempting to deny our freedom of action in space. Additionally, adversaries seek to hold our homeland at risk with advanced space-enabled weapon systems designed to evade our defenses. To counter these threats, we must move quickly to seize the opportunities made possible by the most innovative and productive industry in the world. To do so, if confirmed, I will focus on three priorities: space acquisition reform, mission integration, and the acquisition workforce. I am excited by the acquisition reform that the Department and this Congress have started. If confirmed, I will further the implementation of these reforms by optimizing work for speed, harnessing commercial innovations, adopting new business models, and focusing on mission outcomes. I have done this as a military officer and as a business leader, and it works. If confirmed, I will codify this approach in acquisition strategies and implement change through good execution of space programs, emphasizing technical expertise, sound risk management, agile processes, and mission-driven operational support. These changes will foster a culture of excellence and innovation critical to mission success. In recent years, progress has been made in making space acquisitions nimbler through the development of smaller satellites and modular software-driven architectures. Such architectures can be fielded faster and at lower unit cost, but they create significant integration challenges, as no single system can perform the full mission. If confirmed, I will drive mission integration by validating capabilities end-to-end early and often, taking advantage of the new mission-aligned portfolio acquisition executives, PAEs. If confirmed, I will also establish key mission threads, such as PACE-enabled kill chains, to close gaps, increase efficiency, maximize capacity, and ensure interoperability. Finally, if confirmed, I will partner with stakeholders using the authority that Congress established as chair of the Space Acquisition Council to ensure architectural alignment across the space enterprise. None of these efforts are possible without the professionalism of a talented acquisition workforce. In my experience, we lose talent when people are not empowered with decision authority and are shackled by red tape. If confirmed, I will champion initiatives to revitalize and sustain a vibrant workforce. These include promoting a mission-first culture, proactively managing careers, enhancing training and education, and ensuring programs are staffed with the right people in the right job. Finally, if confirmed, I will personally coach and mentor every PAE, modeling the behavior I expect from them. In the end, the acquisition workforce needs to be recognized for the essential warfighting function they perform. In summary, if confirmed, I commit to advance space acquisition reform, energize mission integration, and revitalize the workforce, working closely with Congress to accelerate delivery of innovative space capabilities to the warfighter. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez-Becerra. In paying tribute to my friend Senator Lindsey Graham, you quoted a few words from High Flight by John Gillespie McGee, Jr. That is a special poem to me and to many of my fellow service veterans, and I thank you for doing that and commend that work of literature to everyone listening. I'll now ask you a series of standard questions this committee poses to all civilian nominees. And please just answer yes or no. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest? Yes.
Yes.
Have you assumed any duties or taken any actions that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No.
No.
Exercising our legislative and oversight responsibilities makes it important that this committee, its subcommittees, and other appropriate committees of Congress receive testimony, briefings, reports, records, and other information from the executive branch on a timely basis. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify before this committee when requested?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you agree to provide records, documents, and electronic communications in a timely manner when requested by this committee, its subcommittees, or other appropriate committees, appropriate committees of Congress, and to consult with the requester regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such records?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you, that is a problem that I think the distinguished ranking member and member of the committee would say that we've had to face. So it's good to hear your answer in the affirmative there. Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established by this committee for the production of reports, records, and other information, including timely responding to hearing questions for the record?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Yes.
Will those witnesses and briefers be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And now we begin with a round of questions by members of the committee, and I'll begin by asking this to you, Mr. O'Malley. The last NDAA that we passed shifted a burden toward what we call commercial first. Is that a term that is familiar to you, sir?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, well, for the benefit of the Americans listening, we shifted the burden from if you're going to buy commercial, you had to get approval, to requiring approvals if you're not going to buy commercial. So if you're going to buy commercial, you don't have to have prior approval anymore. That means we made commercial procurement the preferred option in contracting. However, since the executive order was signed pursuant to legislation passed by the Congress and signed by the President of the United States, the department has actually reduced its commercial spending by nearly 1 percentage point. That's going in the wrong direction according to the statute. So how would you make sure commercial first is taken seriously and actually is implemented according to statute?
Yes, Senator. So as it relates to commercial first, I appreciate that data that you just shared. I had not been aware of that. It's certainly not heading in the right direction. We know from the discussions of commercial first that we need to work with the services to accelerate the adoption of commercial first solutions. There are proven commercial tools we know exist, and this goes to the Secretary's emphasis on the speed of relevance. Commercial first is certainly part of that. There's an opportunity here to solve readiness bottlenecks, introduce the department to new and innovative companies, and if confirmed, I will certainly focus on statute and the executive order to make commercial first a priority.
You know, thank you, and that should go without saying, but let's be clear. If you're not going to buy commercial items, they've got to come get approval. You understand that?
Yes, Senator.
All right, okay. Well, I very much appreciate that. Now, Mr. Hurst, I bet you are aware that there is some dissatisfaction on the part of Congress about the slow rates of obligation of funds provided for in reconciliation. You are aware of frustrations and complaints coming from Congress in that regard, are you not?
Yes, Chairman.
And so how do you propose that we resolve that problem and that frustration?
Well, Chairman, let me first start by saying that I think the reconciliation bill that this Congress passed has been incredibly important for the Department of Defense.
Thank you.
And when we did our posture hearing with the Secretary here in May, I believe our obligation rate was around $25 billion. And from what Senator Reid said, I think now we're above 67. So I think that reflects the Department's commitment to accelerate the obligation of these funds. And while I'm not in the position of comptroller right now, and I can't give you a current total, that figure alone suggests to me that the department is committed to obligating these funds.
Okay, and so do I understand your position to be that the department understands this, that you are moving in the right direction, and that you're going to continue to provide members of this committee and members of the Congress with full and free flow of information in that regard?
Yes, Chairman, and before I left the position of PTDO Comptroller, I was working with the services to create some visualization tools which would accelerate the gathering of this data, which would make it easier to share with Congress.
Okay, and then, Dr. Mason, we're running out of time, but you're going to have to, as I said in my opening statement, balance expanding commercial partnerships with the need for keeping sensitive technologies and capabilities away from our adversaries. That's a balancing act. How do you intend to meet these demands?
And Chairman Wicker, the heart of that question is really in the next-gen architecture that is composed of both proliferated and exquisite technology, the exquisite being more reference to the national technical means that you reference in that regard. We have to do both, and to do both, the commercial element of that is essential. It is now integrated part of the architecture. And so as you embark in that, the security to protect secrets, whether those are born from how you use the commercial or the exquisite capabilities, are really the same, and something, looking from the outside in, NRO has done a remarkable job over in the past, and I certainly will be committed to do the same in the future.
Well, thank you very much. As the three of you know, I mentioned those matters in my opening statement. The fact that I asked my questions about them it consists of a foot stomp about the importance of those matters. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, Secretary Hurst, I must commend your children for their poise and patience, all of which is attributable to your wife, I'm sure. But with that as an introduction, we have had problems getting information from you and from the Department of Defense. For example, in March, I asked for information on the course of the operations in Iran, and my staff followed up numerous times. We received a response on May 11th from the Assistant Secretary of Legislative Affairs that referred me to your testimony, but during those hearings, you didn't provide details and said you'd get back to the committees, and then your nomination intervened. So our staffs have been asking consistently for this information, and I don't think we're alone in being frustrated. If confirmed, do you commit to respond rapidly to my existing inquiries and also additional inquiries going forward?
Mr. Ranking Member, I'm a former congressional staffer. I believe in Congress's oversight role, and if confirmed, I will work with this committee to provide the appropriate data and answer your RFIs.
Yeah. I can't emphasize enough, and you know from your position, if we don't know what is going on, then we're not in a position to make judicious decisions. So it's absolutely essential. And this has been a consistent hallmark, I think, of the department, not giving us the information we're legally entitled to in a timely fashion. So thank you. Mr. O'Malley, what do you see as the main levers that DOD can use to get industry to invest more of its own money in expanding production and self-funded research and development?
Well, Mr. Ranking Member, as an incentive to industry to increase their R&D spending, I certainly believe the multi-year procurement authority that this committee in Congress has given has been very helpful and will continue to be helpful. R&D, and if it's okay to say, I'd like to add facilitization costs as well. This has been a powerful lever to drive down unit costs, expand industrial capability, and work on securing our supply chains. It gives the defense industrial base stability and predictability, so they can continue to make those investments. It's a long-term demand signal for them. And it also allows suppliers to make larger capital commitments throughout the process.
One of the question is that there is a debate about defense contractors' stock buybacks, particularly in situations where they're not meeting budget and cost. What's your opinion on that?
Mr. Ranking Member, I certainly believe that taxpayer dollars should be used to deliver combat capability, not for financial engineering. As it relates to this, the department needs to be a tougher customer. Contractors should not be prioritizing stock buybacks or bonuses. And this is an accountability question, and we need to get after that up front. The president expects capability to be delivered to the warfighter fast and at better cost. And if confirmed, this will certainly be a priority.
Thank you. Dr. Mason, we're in a transition, as you indicated in your testimony. The JSTOS used to be the most significant air and ground movement target indicator system we have. Now that's moving into space. Space Force has operational command and control, but NRO is doing a great deal in terms of acquisition of the space, the satellites, et cetera. Are you worried that NRO might become too operationally focused on near-term Space Force requirements?
Ranking Member Reid, first of all, thank you for taking the time to visit. I appreciate that very much. Let me start by saying that the relationship, the coordination between the United States Space Force and the NRO is essential. It's the cornerstone for space dominance for the nation. At the same time, the roles and responsibilities are quite clear. Space Force, organize, train, and equip. NRO provides space-based intelligence for the IC as well as the warfighter. When I look at, from the outside in, what has occurred in terms of the moving target indicator, first ground, then airborne, I view it as actually a lesson in good government. In terms of the GMTI, the ground MTI, that was a case where the department took some existing technology that was being developed by the NRO, and then instead of starting a brand new program, adapted that technology, which would have been far cheaper, and we certainly got it on orbit a lot quicker. AMTI, as I understand it, takes us to the next step. That's actually being procured by the Space Force on a recent announcement they made. So to me, this is a good progression of good government decision in terms of taking strengths and moving them into areas where they should be done by the military.
Thank you. My time's expired. Dr. Hernandez Vaquero, thank you, and I look forward to working with you. And also, if there are questions, I will just submit them for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I do anticipate there'll be a number of questions for the record. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for being here today and for your willingness to continue to serve your country if confirmed in these new nominations. Dr. Mason, are there opportunities for increased collaboration between intelligence and military space programs? And if so, can you tell us one or two that you may have thought of?
Certainly. First of all, Senator Fisher, I also thank you for the time we spent. I appreciate you making that. I found it very valuable. Yes, Senator, I think the coordination and collaboration between the warfighter and the intelligence community is essential, and it makes us only stronger. To give you an example in terms of a space-based program that was done in coordination with the Space Force and the NRO, that's public, a program called Silent Barker, which is really for space situational awareness. And again, it follows the same pattern as the moving target indicator, starting with some strengths that the NRO had in terms of developing these type of spacecraft, and instead of developing a whole new system, applying resources that were very clear which were coming from the department versus which was coming from the National Intelligence Program, and then using those resources to great effect to produce a system that arguably is going to serve the nation in that regard. So to me, that's a good example of good government.
I think it's extremely important that work continue with Space Force to ensure that we have that smooth transition of these new capabilities to our warfighters. So thank you for that. Over the last decade, we've had a pretty big revolution in commercial space imagery capabilities, and NRO has been able to take advantage of that through various contracts. It's been especially helpful to our combatant commanders. I understand NRO has finite resources, but I would caution against deprioritizing these programs in future budget requests. If confirmed, will you commit to working with me and this committee on addressing this issue?
Yes, Senator, I will. And
thank you. We spoke about that some in our conversation in my office, and I think it's extremely important that we address it in the future. Dr. Hernandez Vaquero, I appreciated your influence on acquisition reform in your opening statement, but transformative reforms require more than updating the statutes and regulations that govern the department's acquisition processes. The underlying acquisition culture needs to change as well so that contracting officers are encouraged to really use those new authorities that they've been given. Which acquisition programs concern you the most as you look at that from a cost, schedule, or even a technical risk perspective?
Senator, thank you for that. And absolutely, I 100% agree with you that we cannot just rely on statutes and policy documents to really change the culture. We need the people to exercise a new way of doing business every day, which is why I'm excited about the reorganization around the portfolio acquisition executives, where they will now be resourced with cross-functional teams and have authority over those teams to employ the right contract strategies across all programs. I'm mostly concerned about our legacy acquisitions that have been ongoing for a number of years. And if confirmed, one of the first things I'll do is review the progress, what's remaining to be done in those legacy acquisitions. Those are the ones that are going to be encumbered the most because they weren't born with the new digital engineering techniques. They weren't born with the intent to integrate into these hybrid architectures. And so that would be the area that I would be most concerned about.
Yeah, there's, I think, a lot of room to improve that accountability in those major acquisition programs. So I hope that we will see some improvement in the delays that we experience. Although I am a proponent of also taking managed risks, I'd say, in order that we can move faster. We have to move faster. Mr. Hurst, I also appreciated our discussion last month on the department's path to achieve a clean audit by the statutory deadline of 2028. I was encouraged by your remarks. I tend to think you're overly optimistic with them. We haven't seen a lot of improvement there, but I think you might be the guy to get it. Are there areas in which congressional action is needed to strengthen those efforts by the department to get that audit done?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. I'm optimistic because with a problem this big, you have to be. That's the only way you're going to get after it. The thing we need most is we need to change our accounting rules to reflect the Department of War's mission. We have Fortune 500 accounting standards for a warfighting organization, and I'll give you a quick example. As part of our audit, we have to validate the value of all of our assets on our books to include things like the USS Constitution, a 200-old warship in Massachusetts. And we have to account for every single modification we made to that vessel in the valuation and prove that to our auditors if they decide to sample that. That's simply not helpful for our warfighting mission. We need to know where our equipment is, its condition, a general statement of its value, but having to do the same kind of estimate we would for any kind of other, Fortune 500 company evaluation is not very helpful. And Congress could help us with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
A very good initial answer to that, that problem. Thank you very much to both of you. Senator Shaheen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Congratulations to each of you on your nominations, and thank you for your willingness to continue to serve the country. Secretary Hurst, yesterday, President Trump announced that he wanted to put a 20% fee on cargo going through the Strait of Hormuz, and he gave us his rationale that we need help if we're going to police operations in the straits, that we need help paying for the cost of those operations. Now, the estimates that I've seen so far suggest that that would result in a $15 increase on a barrel of oil, and that's after yesterday's highest jump in gas prices in 6 years in the United States. Last month, Secretary Rubio was asked about this, and he said that such fees would violate international law. We've heard both the Vice President and Secretary Hegseth, who also confirmed that this was not something that we were considering or should be doing. So what is the position of the department on tolling commercial vehicles through vessels through the Strait of Hormuz?
Senator, I appreciate the question, but this just falls well outside my expertise or knowledge. So we can take that for the record for the department, but I can't give an answer today.
Well, given that the issue that's cited there is the cost of the operations in Iran, it seems to me that that's something that you ought to be intimately involved with if you're confirmed for this position, because it's going to have a huge impact not just on the amount of money that we're paying, but also on how we're being viewed by the rest of the world. As Secretary Rubio has said, this would be a violation of international law. So I hope, if you're confirmed, that you will find out what the department is thinking about this issue. Do I have a commitment that you will do that?
Yes, ma'am. If confirmed, I will dig into this issue.
Thank you. Mr. O'Malley, if confirmed, you'll oversee the office responsible for installations and environment, including PFAS remediation. The FY26 NDAA required the department to provide alternative water in communities around military bases with contamination above state and federal maximum contaminant levels for PFAS. But I'm hearing from residents in New Hampshire that a year after this was put into effect, it has still not been implemented for the former Pease Air Force Base. Despite the fact that the Air Force has, I think most people would agree, been very supportive of cleaning up PFAS in the Portsmouth area around Pease, and so it's disappointing to see that they are not going along with what's been determined to be practice. So if confirmed, will you commit to continuing DOD's existing practice of conducting PFAS cleanup at military installations and communities affected by DOD releases of PFAS, and check into this issue, why our residents in New Hampshire are not having their water being dealt with?
Yes, Senator, I will.
Thank you. Also, for you, Mr. O'Malley, I recently came back from the NATO summit with Senator Rounds and a number of members of the Senate. And while at that summit, the president announced that he would look into an agreement with Ukraine on data sharing for drone procurement. As you know, we have a lot of lessons that we can learn from the Ukrainians with respect to drone technology. The delegation at the summit in Ankara heard that this agreement is currently being held up by the Pentagon. So if confirmed, will you commit to looking into this and reporting back to this committee about what the holdup is and when it's going to move forward?
Yes, Senator, I will.
Thank you. Dr. Mason, the NDAA passed out of this committee includes a provision to require intelligence sharing with the Ukrainian armed forces in Russian-occupied territories. It builds on last year's provision that required notifications of any stop to this intelligence sharing. Can you talk about why this continued intelligence sharing with the Ukrainian armed forces is important and why it would be helpful for us to continue this effort?
Senator Shaheen, in terms of the scope and the mission of the NRO, the focus that I would have, if confirmed, is ensuring that the data collected is accurate and relevant and timely. In terms of information sharing with either allies or other nations, the NRO director has to rely on agencies like the functional manager of NGA, in this case, if it's imagery. And so I would commit to taking that on board to make sure that we supply the NRO, NGA, what's needed in terms of satisfying those requirements from a shareability standpoint. I will also say that from a commercial standpoint, this is one of the benefits of commercial imagery, that it's more easily shareable to satisfy a number of intelligence missions as well as our partners.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Shaheen. Senator Rounds, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me just thank all of you for your service to our country. Mr. O'Malley, I'm going to ask you a question that I normally wouldn't ask, except for the fact that I think it's been brought up that specifically it's technical in nature, but it's one that I think we want to bring attention to. The Portable Intermittent Fault Detector, or PIFID. This is an aircraft wiring tester achieved authority to operate on the F-35 program in 2020. Over the last 6 years, the PIFID has been used only to respond to action requests and have resolved over 90 aircraft wiring problems, including returning grounded aircraft to operational status. According to the Department of War and GAO data, the PIFID has increased readiness by more than 50% on every aircraft wiring system that has been applied to. A GAO report identified that 3 out of 4 F-35s are not mission capable. As it pertains to the F-35 aircraft wiring intermittent faults and no-fault found tests, results are of significant concern to this committee due to there being 3 variants of this aircraft with 47 different wiring configurations. If confirmed, will you work with me and the committee to determine why the PIFID has not been fully adopted and industrializes a standard piece of support equipment across the F-35 program, and to establish a deadline for the adoption and deployment of the PIFID to F-35 maintainers to improve the readiness and sustainability of this critical weapons platform and to facilitate its deployment. Like I say, technical in nature, but pretty important.
Yes, Senator, and thank you for meeting with me to discuss 3D printing and the South Dakota School of Mines. I appreciated our time. If confirmed, I would welcome the opportunity to work with you on this issue and this committee and the Joint Program Office to examine specific engineering, funding, and bureaucratic barriers that have limited PIFID across the F-35 program. This
has been recommended not just by the committee, but by the Pentagon in general. It needs to be implemented. The supplemental sent to Congress includes much-needed funding to replenish munitions and cover operational costs. It does not include a request for military construction funds. While the department should review its CENTCOM footprint and possibly reposture for the current threat, I am concerned that not seeking military construction in the supplemental will drive the cost of rebuilding CENTCOM's infrastructure and presence into future base budget requests that will already be crowded with military construction requirements to support the bed down of the B-21, the F-47, Sentinel, and other emerging weapon systems. For Mr. Hurst, I understand the battle assessments take time, as well as figuring out what our partners will pay for and what we will pay for. But what are your thoughts on emergency appropriations that provide time for a regional posture review and funds to rebuild our presence, balanced with reporting and consultation with the Congress before the department moves out?
Senator, let me come back to you after I've given that some thought. This conflict could greatly change our posture in the region, and I think that's something that has to be taken into account. But if you don't mind, I'll come back to you later on.
That's fair. Well, matter of fact, if you'd like, I'll put it into a question for the record for you.
Let's do that.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Hurst, can you discuss some of the internal bureaucratic hurdles that prevent the department from rapidly allocating and executing congressionally appropriated funds? Are there any resources or authorities Congress could provide that would help mitigate those issues? And lastly, in 2025, the department advocated flexible funding for all software programs. Mr. Hurst, do you still believe the department needs this flexible authority for software and similar digital tools and systems?
Senator Rounds, I really enjoyed talking about this issue with you in your office. So as many of you know, it takes us a very long time to get funds from appropriation to the actual executing program office or unit. Sometimes that's 2 or 3 months inside the department. The main reason for that is we don't have a centralized electronic funds disbursement system. In fact, when Comptroller initially gets an apportionment from OMB, we get that via PDF, and then we provide a PDF to the services. That's obviously not acceptable in the 21st century, and so before I left performing the duties of Comptroller, I put together a tiger team to get after this issue. I would like to see us get funds dispersed across the department within 1 or 2 weeks at the most. We'll be working towards that. Sir, you mentioned funding flexibility. The PPB Commission has been very clear on that. The department probably needs more flexibility in a lot of areas, including software. But in order to do that properly, we have to make sure we have the appropriate mechanisms to communicate and be transparent with Congress. And so that's a conversation I'd like to continue to have with you if confirmed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hurst, thank you for your service. You have an incredible career, and I want to thank you and your family for continuing to dedicate your time and talent to the defense of this country. It's a significant undertaking. You have a very important job as controller. Your job fundamentally is going to be about transparency and accountability. And one of the burdens, I think, of this job you're going to have right now is that the American people are very concerned about the lack of transparency and accountability when it comes to this war. From their perspective, it's an unauthorized, illegal, unwanted war. The amount of spending is astronomical. I think you've just recently given us the $67 billion number. If they had a choice, they'd rather $67 billion fund Medicaid and their health care. They'd rather have $67 billion fund to get the cost of groceries down, to get the cost of fuel down. And with the constant problems in the Strait of Hormuz and the continuing and the escalating of this war, people are very distressed about the cost of fueling their cars, fueling their homes, the cost of diesel for truck drivers, and the cost it's having on everything because of that increase. So transparency is something that we care very much about. And in your budget, it is not clear, especially for the supplemental, what is creating these enormous costs. You're asking for an additional $350 billion, which to New Yorkers is going to seem like a slush fund to them. So it's unclear, are these costs to pay for the destruction because of the war to our bases and operations abroad? Is this cost because of the increase in cost to our Navy ships because they were extended at sea? Are these costs because of wasteful domestic deployments of DoD personnel?
Senator, again, thanks for the question. The $67 billion supplemental, I wasn't involved in the generation of that because I'm not in the position of comptroller. But let me say this. The department needs a generational investment in its defense, right? The Arleigh Burke class destroyer, the first one was commissioned in 1985, 40 years ago. It's still the mainstay of our surface fleet. The Air Force is planning to fly the KC-135 until potentially the 2070s. We have to update our platforms. We have to buy affordable mass. We have to procure autonomous warfare platforms and integrate them into the force.
Well, let's talk about autonomous platforms. I know that you've authored at least articles or books, I'm not sure, on AI as well as autonomous systems. And I'm highly concerned about the bombing of a school in Iran, a girls' school. That bombing has been deeply upsetting to New Yorkers. 120 children were killed, and we still don't have a report on that. Again, transparency and accountability. It is essential that this department give this Congress the report of how that target was selected, why more recent data and information showing that it was clearly a girls' school and no longer part of the military base that was next door. Have you been given the report on how that targeting was made and whether AI systems were used?
Senator, I have not seen that report. I regret the loss of any civilian life in any conflict.
I'm also deeply concerned that as we wrote this last NDAA, there was pushback by the department on making sure that there's a human in the loop. The language that they agreed to was appropriate human oversight. That is obviously not the same thing as human in the loop. And so when we are choosing targets, I understand when it comes to defense, having autonomous, quick systems to protect men and women on the battlefield, protect our assets, protect our infrastructure is essential, and having AI-enhanced capabilities to defend is extremely important. But I'm highly concerned that before we push send on a missile that is going to target perhaps a girls' school because the targeting was done so poorly and the analysis wasn't done accurately, that we have a human in the loop. What is your view on that?
Well, Senator, I would say I think it's very important for the department to engage with the committee and talk about how it's using AI. And I think, as somebody who worked on Project Maven and was a targeting officer in his career, I think AI has the potential to actually improve the safety for civilians in warfare. It's all about how we implement it, but we owe you that conversation.
Absolutely, and we are waiting for that report. And Mr. Chairman, for the record, I hope we receive that report soon.
Thank you very much, Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ernst.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to start by saying thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our ranking member as well for recognizing our dear colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. I've looked across the dais, and that incredible gentleman was a friend, I think, to all of us on this committee, and he most certainly was a friend to our Department of War. So thank you for that, and thank you for remembering him. I won't be able to get to all of you today, but I do hope that all of you are committed to delivering results, and specifically faster fielding of capabilities for our warfighter as we go through this next fiscal year. Budgeting is important, our space capabilities, and absolutely, Mr. Hurst, we're going to focus very heavily on clear accountability for the taxpayers and the warfighters. So I will start with you, Secretary. The fiscal year 27 budget request was actually built before we started engaging in epic fury, before we had an oil blockade on Cuba. So we have these additional issues that are pressing upon our department, and yet we're trying to manage those ongoing operations with the new operations that we have in the Middle East and the Caribbean. With the ongoing operations, we're doing modernization, we're developing munitions, we're replenishing systems that have been destroyed. So, Secretary, is the fiscal year 27 budget sufficient to cover these demands? Very simple.
Senator, I believe the FY27 budget request from the Department of War is sufficient to cover those demands.
Thank you. And is money currently being shifted from other priorities? Are we managing that money and taking from one area to cover down on some of those additional operations?
Senator, again, I've avoided presuming confirmation, so I'm not involved in the fiscal management of the department at this time. But I would say historically, whenever there are contingency operations, the department makes trade-offs within its current year budget.
Mm-hmm. So I would argue that as we're moving forward, most certainly I'm sure money has been shifted and we need to replenish where we can. So I do hope that this committee and others in the Senate are able to come together and find a way forward to reinforce our Department of War. Moving on to the audit, it's been brought up a number of times. The department is committed by the year 2028 to complete a clean audit. And we found a lot of material weaknesses in the fiscal year 25 audit. I think there were 26 of those weaknesses identified, and we still have taxpayers being asked to fund $1.5 trillion for the defense of our nation. So what specifically, and this is coming from an old auditor. I started my elected career as an auditor, mind you, for a very small rural county in Iowa, but as an auditor. So what specifically has changed in your approach to completing a clean audit? And what milestones do you assess you can meet at the one-year mark?
Senator, the fundamental change in our approach is this. Previously, we were pursuing over 25 different opinions to get to the DOW audit. We were boiling the ocean slowly. Now what we're doing is pursuing a Dow consolidated audit. We're raising our materiality, and we're focused on the biggest liabilities in our balance sheet. And we're going to focus our resources against those. The other thing we're doing that's compelling is we're hiring an IPA. The IG is hiring an IPA to run the audit. And this IPA is going to have access to advanced tools and AI systems that will help them incorporate the data, look at it faster than the IG staff can. We're also doing that on our side. We're applying artificial intelligence. The Marine Corps, which has had a clean opinion for 3 years in a row, has many material weaknesses left. They got their opinion by substantive testing. We can do the same thing inside DOW with the use of artificial intelligence and the leveraging of resources.
No, I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with you over the next 6 months in my remaining time here to make sure that you are achieving that clean audit. I do want to recognize as well, you do bring up the USS Constitution, and that's an interesting argument that maybe we need to have. It is still an active naval vessel. So it does belong to the Navy, and it does have to be accounted for. But at the same time, you bring up an interesting point where it's not really focusing on an active mission for our war fighters. And perhaps as we identify areas such as the USS Constitution, and I'm not saying please, I know the Navy is just going to come after me for this, but perhaps in the future we need to have those conversations about what remains in the inventory of the United States Department of War, or what maybe gets shifted to other entities like the Smithsonian, where it could be supported by federal dollars and private donors. Again, the Navy will come after me for this, but it is is an interesting conversation. I'm not supporting or not supporting, but certainly you do bring up an interesting point. We want to make sure that our taxpayer dollars are going specifically for the war fighter. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. I wonder to what extent that is a rather rare example or
It's rare.
something that is writ large, but I appreciate your input in that regard, and thank you for your service. Senator Hirono is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask the following two questions of all nominees before any of the committees on which I sit to ensure the fitness to serve. So I'd like the responses starting from Mr. Hurst, and then we'll go down the line. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
No, Senator.
No.
No.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No.
No.
This is for Mr. Hurst. In April, you testified that Operation Epic Fury, better known as the war in Iran, had cost approximately $29 billion, largely driven by munitions, operations, and maintenance expenditures. More recently, independent assessments suggest the true cost is already over $100 billion when damaged aircraft, bases, and other war-related expenses are fully accounted for. What is the department's current estimate of the total cost of Operation Epic Fury, including the other expenses I mentioned?
Senator, during my testimony before this committee, I conveyed the estimate compiled by the military officers of the Joint Staff and the civilian comptroller workforce, unmodified. I don't have an updated estimate, ma'am, because I haven't been in the position of comptroller, but if confirmed, I'm happy to work with you to get that answer.
Well, all indications are that there's no end in sight of the cost of this war, and I think that this committee and the American people need to be apprised on a regular basis what is happening with this war, because prices keep going up with all of the other items that our families have to pay for. And I'd ask you, how do you expect that these costs are being absorbed by the services, and how are you assessing, or how will you assess the impact that this additional spending has had on readiness? At some point, the cost of this war is going to impact readiness, i.e., we have ships in the Middle East. They've been there for months. When they need to be they need to be prepared. They need to. Our shipyards have to ready them for the next deployment. So, how is all of this going to happen? Are you going to be responsible for coordinating some of this?
Senator, if confirmed, I would be responsible for helping the services solve current year execution problems. Again, I don't know what the current state is because I'm not performing the duties of comptroller, but if confirmed, I'd be happy to help work to get those answers for you.
I hope that, Mr. Chairman, that as we go along, that all of our nominees who are not currently in their positions, or if they are, they're in an acting position, that they can be called back to our committee so they can give us the appropriate information that we are requesting. It is very frustrating to ask them what the costs are, et cetera, and the response is that we're not there yet, and so we can't tell you. So, in your opening statement, Mr. Hurst, you mentioned that your first priority is, and quote, to prove the fiscal responsibility of the department to the American people. Fiscal responsibility. At the same time, the DOD obligated more than $2 billion in non-reimbursed funds and over $2 billion in reimbursable funds, which still hasn't been paid to the Department of Homeland Security. And so as part of fiscal responsibility, do you intend to get this money back from DHS, and do you anticipate giving more money, reimbursable or not, to DHS? Because they have their own huge pot of money that this Congress just appropriated without any guardrails on their activity, and they are in the process of killing more people. Did you get the money back? Do you intend to get the money back from DHS?
Senator, when I was performing the duties of the comptroller, I signed a memorandum of agreement with DHS for reimbursement, and I held several meetings with DHS leadership about reimbursement. If confirmed, I will continue to pursue reimbursement for the department.
Do you know if they reimbursed the billions that the DoD already provided to DHS?
In my current position of Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, I don't know.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this is pretty frustrating. So this goes to the question I was asking you, Mr. Hurst, about ship maintenance, and I should ask Mr. O'Malley. You know what, obviously I'm going to need to submit this question for the record, but I have concerns about ship maintenance as our ships are deployed for much longer deployments, especially in the Middle East. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Honro. And your comment is noted. I would remind you that it is improper for any nominee to assume any duties or take any actions that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process. And so that's a question that we always ask, and we very much mean it. So there is a balance there, and I can appreciate your opinion in that regard. We now move to Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, thank each of you for being willing to serve. Congratulations on your nominations. So, Secretary Hurst, let me start with you. My question was all going to be, or the beginning for you was going to be about what Senator Ernst brought up. How do we get these audits done? It makes no sense. I mean, I'm a business guy. I couldn't erase a dime if I couldn't do audits. So, do you feel comfortable that this is going to get done?
Senator, I'm confident we can do it. I have a lot of faith in the comptroller workforce and service comptrollers. It is a tremendous effort. It will take a new approach.
Okay, thanks. Mr. O'Malley, the government of Communist China has decided to be our enemy. What I've never understood, I've been up here 7.5 years, is why our military continues to be dependent on Communist China for anything. When they come up here, we're buying our drones from them. Even today, we still buy computers and all sorts of stuff, TVs, all sorts of stuff that we use. We're completely dependent on them for generic drugs, which they could stop giving to us any moment. So, what's your strategy to stop buying all this stuff from Communist China? We're spending a lot of this money in the military because they want to be our enemy, and then we're buying stuff from them. Makes no sense to me, and it doesn't seem like the change is happening very fast.
Yes, Senator, China is clearly our number one adversary. As it relates to the supply chain, we need to do a better job of illuminating the supply chain and systematically identifying, targeting, and decoupling from China. I think we need to continue to deploy the advanced supply chain tools that we've been working with to gain multi-tier visibility with no choke points. And of course, we also need to reshore these capabilities as quickly as possible, and it will certainly be a focus if confirmed.
So is it going to happen? I mean, everybody, in the last 7 years, everybody comes up and says, yep, we're going to do this. But is somebody going to do it?
So, Senator,
it's not happening. I mean, as far as I can tell.
So the department recently released the 1260H list about the technology of Chinese military, identifying, isolating adversarial military influence. That strikes me as a good first step, and continuing to emphasize decoupling from China.
So, Dr. Hernandez-Beccaro, so the Space Coast is a big deal in Florida, right? I think we've got the best commercial space capabilities and the best skilled workforce probably in the world for space launch there. Can you talk about why this is important to the Department of War?
Yes, Senator, hailing from the great state of Florida and having spent my time at the Space Coast, I absolutely agree with you. It's essential. Our launch capacity is the best in the world, and we need to continue to maintain it and increase it. We need more capacity from our launch facilities in order to fill out the hybrid architectures. We're generating and developing more satellites than ever. That's seen in the proliferated architectures that we're deploying, and that puts a lot of demand on the spaceports. So it's absolutely essential that we maintain and we grow that capacity.
Right.
And if confirmed, I will work with department stakeholders to ensure that we do that.
Thank each of you for your commitment.
Thank you very much, Senator Scott. Senator King.
Mr. Hurst, I'm unpersuaded by your professions of ignorance about the cost of the war. You were the acting comptroller and chief financial officer of the Department of Defense until May 20th. That's about 7 weeks ago. And to sit here today and say, well, I don't really know and I'm not in the position, come on, you had to know this question was going to come up at this hearing today. How much has the Iran war cost the American people?
Senator King, I will give you the same answer I gave you during the posture hearing, that it was $29 billion at the time I left the position. If confirmed, I'm going to work
Does
with this.
that $29 billion include damage to facilities and assets in the region?
No, Senator. That estimate did not include military construction. Again, we don't know what the posture is going to be. There are lessons learned from military construction from this conflict. I would say one of these is that the United States needs to invest more in hardened and deeply buried facilities, particularly in these kinds of areas, but it doesn't reflect MILCON.
So that's not part of the estimate. What the estimate that you gave of $29 billion was simply essentially munitions and expenditures in direct result of the conflict.
Senator, yeah, I would characterize that estimate as largely munitions. From memory, it was over $20 billion in munitions, and most of the rest of that was operational cost, whether that's fuel.
In preparing for this hearing, you didn't ask any questions about updating that number?
I felt it would be inappropriate to do so because that's not in my current role in the department.
Well, I think it's very frustrating to the American people that we can't get a straight answer on what this war is costing, not to mention what it's costing and has cost the American people at the gas pump and in other costs. Mr. O'Malley, on acquisition, one thing that I think is important today, more than perhaps in the past, is buying the intellectual property when we buy a platform so that we can maintain and build parts. Every depot, every aircraft hangar, every ship should have a 3D printer. We shouldn't have to go back to the manufacturer. Do you agree?
Yes, Senator, I do agree that obtaining the intellectual property up front should be a focus of the department as we're negotiating agreements. I do think there's a balance here. We need to let industry know that we have the ability to protect their IP after it's transferred to us. But I will, I'm thinking about what the CNO testified recently, where he said that the inability to perform organic repairs due to lack of technical data is inexcusable. I certainly support that, and I think intellectual property is.
I appreciate that. And then to reiterate the point, right to repair is an important part of our responsibility and something that we should ensure that this is an enormous cost center. And also, in a time of conflict, it's a time issue, is it not?
Yes, Senator. When I first started at the department, I sat next to a military assistant who told me a story about being on a FOB in Afghanistan and having to wait 5 days to have his equipment repaired. They had to bring a contractor in to get it done. I was very surprised by that. Certainly not acceptable, and if confirmed, it will be certainly be a focus of mine.
Well, I hope that this is a serious commitment because both in terms of time and cost, the American people cannot afford long delays in this kind of situation. Thank you. I do have that commitment, do I not?
Yes, Senator, I absolutely commit to working with you on it.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez, or Dr. Hernandez-Becerra, a big part of the cost of Iron Dome is going to be in your domain. Do you have any estimates, or have you looked at Iron Dome and at what the cost projections are? Because we have estimates from the administration of $125 to $185 billion. CBO recently said over $1 trillion. What's this going to cost us?
Senator King, I have not been briefed on the details of the Golden Dome project and the development.
I said Iron Dome, didn't I? Golden Dome.
Yes, Senator, but it was started as that, and so I appreciate that. The system is complex, but and I have not been briefed on the details, but I do know that the administration and that the program manager on that effort is laser focused on ensuring that we do that affordably. And if confirmed, I will work closely with the program manager to ensure that the space elements of that architecture are scalable and can be delivered at an affordable cost.
Thank you. And Mr. O'Malley, I'm out of time, but perhaps I'll follow up with a question on this. I'm very concerned about the administration's continuing pressure toward building warships abroad. I think that's a terrible idea, both from a national security point of view, an industrial base point of view, American workers' point of view. Are you aware of this push by OMB to build warships in South Korea and Japan?
Senator, I'm not aware of that specifically, but it's certainly something that I'd take for the record and happy to respond with.
Well, I hope you will, because it's very disturbing and wrongheaded in my view, and I think it's an insult to American workers. So I would appreciate if you would follow up on that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Hurst, should you be confirmed, if a member of this committee or a member of this Congress called you up and asked you for some information about the cost of the current operation in and around Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, you would readily speak to that member of Congress and supply that information, would you not?
Chairman, absolutely. On this or any other issue, I will be transparent with Congress.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I believe Senator Banks is next in line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hurst, the One Big Beautiful Bill provided funding to critical industrial base areas such as solid rocket motor production. Some of this funding remains unobligated as of today. Why have those funds not been obligated?
Senator, I'd have to get back with the department and find out exactly what funds are unobligated from those lines. But I commit to doing that, and I'll take that for the record.
I appreciate that. No idea. Can you speculate at all, or I appreciate you getting back with us and working with us on it.
I don't know where that is in the contracting process, Senator.
Okay. All industrial-based funding through IBAS and Title III must go through the Economic Defense Unit for deal team involvement for negotiating equity. What can be done to expedite that process, especially for solid rocket fuel production?
Senator, that's a little bit outside of my lane, but I can take that for the record and find out what the current policies are in the department for that kind of acquisition.
Okay, I look forward to that. Appreciate that. Also, Mr. Hurst, if confirmed, you'll play an important role in the potential Reconciliation 3.0. Last year, the reconciliation bill secured $170 million for a Navy radar depot, but the money instead went to the Army. How will you ensure that the department follows congressional intent for future reconciliation bills? Certainly better than the last one.
Senator Banks, I think we can make some improvements in our process and communication regarding reconciliation spending. Part of that is developing better tools inside the department so we can quickly gather information and share it with Congress. And if confirmed, I'm committed to doing that.
Any ideas of how we can do that better?
I think the biggest thing is making sure we have the software in place and visualization tools to track things in real time so we can share adjustments to spend plans with Congress.
Okay, I look forward to you submitting your questions to your answers to the first couple of questions for the record. I'll look for those answers. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, and I do believe we have Senator Kelly next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hurst, the administration, I want to follow up on Senator King's question about Golden Dome. So it's made it a priority. It is a significant investment in limited resources that we have. So before Congress commits taxpayers to what could become the most expensive defense program in our nation's history, we need some confidence that the system is going to deliver the capability that's being promised. And to me, right now, It's clear that it won't. The most ambitious elements of Golden Dome is the space-based interceptor layer, and that is going to face significant technical challenges. The cost, the physics, the likely reliability, in my view, do not support a full-scale space-based intercept architecture. This means that we could spend more than $1 trillion and end up with a system that's not going to work, and it's not going to meaningfully improve our security. So, Mr. Hurst, what analysis gives you confidence that Golden Dome is a responsible use of taxpayer dollars rather than an extraordinarily expensive system that's not going to achieve the stated objectives?
Well, Senator Kelly, I appreciate your background in this area. I would say I have confidence in this because I trust the program manager, General Gutlein, to make these kinds of determinations and change course inside the program if necessary to achieve an outcome at the appropriate cost for the taxpayer. This is a better issue to be held in a classified session, but if you haven't gotten a brief from him, sir, I'd recommend it. It's compelling.
I've gotten multiple briefs from him. Have you seen an analysis, a technical analysis that has convinced you that this is achievable? Or you just trust that he tells you we can do this?
I believe it's possible to have a space-based interceptor capability. I think
based on what?
I think the big determination there is what will the cost per unit be, whether or not it's a fieldable capability that produces the kind of result we want.
Do you understand that defeating a system with countermeasures and decoys is cheaper than interceptors?
I'm familiar with some of the dynamics of engagement in a space environment.
Yeah, and so that becomes a math problem, like an economics math problem, is that the adversary's ability to defeat the system is less expensive than our cost to build the system.
It will depend on how the technology turns out, but I think there's an opportunity to avoid that exact engagement scenario in a manner that makes the system more effective.
How do we do that?
I think, again, that'd be a better classified session.
But you know how we do that?
I haven't had a brief on that, and if that's still what General Gutlein's line of thinking is, I think it's a possibility that we should be interested in investing in the research and development dollars that to procure.
Let's say if the department cannot demonstrate that Golden Dome will provide the level of protection that the administration publicly states it will, I mean, why would Congress be asked to commit more than $1 trillion over the life cycle before these questions have all been answered? Because I'm not convinced they've been answered.
Well, Senator Kelly, I haven't heard that cost estimate of $1 trillion. I've heard
from the CBO.
Is that what we're saying? Well, I think the department's cost estimate at the time that I was PTDO comptroller is $185 billion for the entire system. And the most compelling parts of Golden Dome for me are the situational awareness aspects, which will pay dividends for the department outside of just missile defense.
I agree with that. So there are things in the program that make sense. Detecting launches, even some other approaches to this. The space-based interceptor part is really, really hard, and the physics clearly favors the offense. So we could go down this road, spend hundreds of billions of dollars, and not get any return on that investment. And missile defense is, too important to pursue this just based on aspiration alone. So I want to make sure that we have a system that is technically achievable, strategically sound, and represents the best use of limited resources. And so the department should be able to demonstrate not only what Golden Dome will cost, but that it can realistically deliver on this promise of missile defense. And I have not seen any convincing evidence of that to date. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses and their families for your commitment to service. It's not always easy. It can be really hard on the families, so it's great to see all the families supporting our nominees today. I want to mention to a couple of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. First, Senator Kelly. I was with some of the defense tech companies that are working on missile defense and Golden Dome, and I think it'd be great for you and Senator King, Senator Kane, all you guys, gals, to meet with some of them as well. I think there's a lot of innovation happening, and I know they'd welcome the opportunity to brief you guys, bringing down costs, increasing technological capabilities, and I think it's an exciting time in our missile defense world. Also on the supplemental, I really want to encourage my Democrat colleagues not to just reject that. A little bit of history lessons. Some of you were here, some of you weren't, but when Biden was president, when Schumer was the majority leader, the White House brought up a Ukraine supplemental, and a lot of us worked on it. We improved it, we made it better, and then we voted for it. And this is for Senator Kelly and others when he's leaving. You know, during the NDAA markup, there was a lot of discussion about munitions. People wanted to talk about munitions, and so this is a munitions supplemental. And it would be really disappointing if my Democrat colleagues say, out of hand, we're going to reject the supplemental. We didn't do that when Biden was president and Schumer was majority leader. And it would be really disappointing if you guys did that and if you guys voted against cloture on the NDAA today. There's a lot of politics going on, but usually the politics that are encompassing the country don't usually kind of come to the Armed Services Committee. And if the NDAA is rejected today, if the supplemental is rejected, I think my colleagues on the other side of the aisle know that that'll be just for politics. And usually we try, the serious senators on this committee try to forego politics and focus on national security. And I hope when it comes to the supplemental, when it comes to getting on the NDAA today, that they do the right thing. And that would be voting for these things, or at least considering them. I know the minority leader Schumer doesn't care about national defense, but you guys do, and I think that's important. So,
if the war was authorized, Mr. Senator, if the war had been authorized, it would be a different discussion.
Was the Ukraine war authorized?
The gentleman, the senator from Alaska has the floor.
Yeah, I think you know I'm onto something that's correct, and I hope you guys just don't reject it out of hand because you're being told to by your far-left leadership, which isn't serious about national security and never has been. So let me turn to Mr. O'Malley, Mr. Hertz. One of the things that I've been trying to do, again, bipartisan in this committee, is lead the efforts on multi-year procurement opportunities that can help us on our defense industrial base, can help us bring down the costs. Can you talk more about the utility that comes from multi-year procurement capabilities in the Pentagon and encourage services to use it? Some have, some haven't, and I think it's a tool that's important. Either of you can take that.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, multi-year procurement is a powerful lever to drive down unit costs, to expand industrial capability, capacity, and to secure our supply chains. This long-term demand signal is important for industry. It gives the defense industrial base predictability and stability, and it allows the suppliers to make larger capital investments.
And do we see all the services utilizing this to its full capability?
Senator, the services are working through all of their programs. It's my understanding, working through all their programs and working through the trade-offs on that. So I do know that they're engaged in that question.
Okay, if confirmed, can you help encourage them to do so? Some have done it better than others.
Yes, Senator, if confirmed, I will.
Great. Mr. Hernandez-Vaquero, I want to talk about some of the things that are going on with regard to missile defense. In Alaska, we have Clear Space Force, the LRDR system there, Cobra Dane. At Shemya, of course, the ground-based missile interceptors at Fort Greely. If confirmed, will you commit to working with me to achieve the funding needed to bring the next generation of capabilities in terms of missile defense to Alaska, where we are the cornerstone of missile defense for the country right now, and the Golden Dome is going to build on the components in Alaska, but the components are still very important.
Senator, I'm aware of how vital these systems are, and if confirmed, I would look forward to working with you to ensure that we have the right sensing systems and response systems to protect our homeland.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Slotkin.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. I think it's important to recognize that we are back at war with Iran. The ceasefire is dead. 14 American citizens have been killed, uniformed military, 400 injured. The Iranians now have a veto over what goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Mr. Hurst, you are here to get the top job as comptroller, handling the money for the department, hugely important job. And you've heard from my colleagues, and I will say for Senator Sullivan, those of us who care deeply about national defense, I don't think it's a big ask to try and just get the straight numbers for the cost of this war. And this committee for 20 years handled the cost of Iraq and Afghanistan. That's part of our business. So to ask that we just vote on something and without having basic accountability, as you depart, Senator Sullivan, I think is disingenuous. We should be able to get just a very basic answer from the person who wants to be the comptroller on the cost of the war. Now, you said you didn't prepare that answer today because you didn't want to look like you had any idea what was going on with the budget. So I did some back-of-the-envelope math just from what's available on the cost of the war. We know that the war has already cost the taxpayers separately out of their own pockets $100 million. The cost of gas, fuel prices that have gone up, the cost of airline tickets, delivery service fees. That's $750 out of every American household in the entire country since February. So it's $100 million. But then there's the second time they have to pay. They already paid at the office, and they've got to pay again with whatever the ultimate cost of this war is going to be to the department. The math that I've seen is you've sent over a request for $67 billion to cover down on some of the costs of the war. That doesn't include any of the repairs to the major damage to our bases and locations in the Middle East, MILCON as we call it. We've seen reports of another $30 billion needed for MILCON. And then since the war has restarted just this month, back of the envelope is $1 billion for July combat operations. So by my math, that's $98 billion for the cost to the department. You can correct me if I'm getting any of those numbers wrong. So $100 billion already that American taxpayers have paid, plus a coming, let's round it up, 98 to 100 billion coming in the department's bill, which is taxpayer dollars. So we're starting to hear reports that the department is strained in paying its basic bills. They're parking jets. The CNO was up here in May and said, if he doesn't get more money, he's going to have to cut training. We're hearing that folks are having a problem with just doing basic exercises. We're hearing that repairs on our bases, like things that serve our families, we're only doing emergency housing repairs. You don't want to answer any questions for the comptroller, but you are sitting in a job for the Army. Can you please say under oath any things that have been postponed, cut back, or put on hold because we do not have money anymore in the Army due to the Iran war?
Senator, I don't have a listing of specific training exercises.
Do you know of any? Just in fairness, has anything been put on hold? Has anything been changed in the department because of the cost of the Iran war? Which it would be normal for me. That would be something I would expect. Every family understands if you're going to spend a ton over here, you got to tighten your belt. But do you know of any programs that have been put on hold, suspended because of the Iran war?
Senator, I don't have specifics, but I will say this. Whenever there's a contingency operation, because we build our budget 2 years in advance of getting it, we have to make trade-offs inside that budget to fund current operations.
Sure.
That's always been the way it is.
Sure, but I think this is, again, we want to understand what those costs are. You will be the comptroller in charge of the very new grants and loans that the department is putting out, and I'm very concerned about just the look of corruption. We know that the president's sons have gotten $3.2 billion in contracts from the federal government since he became president. Some of these things, $900 million commitments to Navy contracts for companies associated with Don Jr. Do you understand that even the appearance of a conflict of interest makes you subject to an IG report, and that you will be in charge of approving these major contracts as they go out the door?
Senator, the comptroller doesn't approve contracts.
The spending of
But
dollars.
We approve obligation of dollars, but we give it to program offices to go and execute. I have great faith in the department's ability to control for any kind of bias or injustice in awarding contracts. I think we do that very well.
So you'll be willing to put your name on some of these, some of the biggest contracts in Pentagon history are being let right now. And you're the guy who has to check the switch, right, to get that money. I just want to make sure we are understanding that you will be responsible for putting your stamp of approval on the movement of that money for contracts that could be linked directly to the president's sons.
Senator, I want to clarify, the comptroller does not award contracts for the entire
You
department.
move the money.
We give program offices money or services money. They make
You can call it a
contract
technicality. I was at the Pentagon. If you don't want that money moving, it doesn't move. So I just want to be understanding, and I know my time is up, that your name will be on that for these contracts, these historic contracts that are being let to the president's sons.
Thank you, Senator Slotkins. We have Senator Budd and then Senator Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Congrats to each of you on your nominations, and thanks to the families as well. Secretary Hurst, it's great to see you. Based on your time on projects like Advanced Project Maven, so what's your vision for aligning our defense budget to better support the rapid scaling of AI and autonomous systems? And kind of draw from your history a little bit, if you will.
Senator, I think we're in this really interesting pathfinding phase right now, where we're not ready to whole-scale commit to programs of record that are related to autonomous warfare. But part of the FY27 budget request is arranged as a fund for the Defense Autonomous Warfare Group so they can do that pathfinding and sprinkle that technology across the entire department, and then also start to integrate it to existing programs and future programs in requirements form. But I think what we're going to start seeing here in the next 5 years is a rapid acceleration of this technology's integration to every single platform inside the Department of War.
Thanks a lot. Dr. Hernandez-Becerra, good to see you as well. So I had a chance to meet recently with the next Chief of Space Operations, and I learned about the investments we're making, including space-based AMTI. So what's your plan to make sure that that's a success?
Senator, the space-based MTI is a vital element of the architecture. It provides domain awareness, and it's the front end of these space-enabled kill chains. If confirmed, I will have oversight over that part of the portfolio, and my goal will be to, as I noted in my priorities, to take advantage of the acquisition reform that's underway to empower the portfolio acquisition executives that are executing that program to ensure we do that at speed, building out on the existing capabilities that are out there that we've been able to harness, working with partners across the department and across the interagency. And if confirmed, I will be committing to ensuring that we deliver that at speed.
Thank you. I look forward to that. Dr. Mason, it's good to see you again. I'm excited to see what you're going to do at the NRO. So with the rapid proliferation of commercial space tech, how do you plan to integrate those assets into NRO's operations?
Senator Budd, first of all, thank you for taking the time to meet. I enjoyed our discussion and got a lot out of it. In terms of the next-gen hybrid architecture, the key there is that, to use your word, that these capabilities are integrated. In the past, when we were first starting as a nation, the commercial was a bolt-on. So looking at the proliferated as well as the exquisite integrated together is the key. I would say that in terms of the question about artificial intelligence, that's going to be the means by which that is done. It's not possible to do what the government wants to do in terms of the hybrid architecture without AI, and then doing it responsibly in a way that we get great effect as a nation, but also are mindful about risk management as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Malley, congrats again on your nomination. So given your mixed background in private sector investments in Navy intelligence. What are you most excited to tackle first when it comes to cutting through red tape, getting cutting-edge capabilities into the hands of our warfighters faster?
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you acknowledging the private sector background. At the company that I founded, we were very much focused on taking large data sets and being able to understand answers to questions that maybe you didn't even think of. And it would allow us to just move that much further ahead in the decision-making process. That is certainly something that I'd be excited about. But if confirmed, my top priorities are the Secretary's vision for acquisition transformation and into a new warfighting acquisition system, rebuilding the defense industrial base, expanding its capacity, bringing in new and innovative companies, and elevating and empowering, importantly, our acquisition workforce so that we can make faster, risk-informed decisions.
Very good. Question again for you, Mr. O'Malley and Dr. Hernandez-Becerro, about multi-year procurement. So there's efforts to do multi-year procurement and the authorities for that on ships, aircraft, munitions. So what are your thoughts on additional acquisition programs that might be beneficial for us? Something like satellites, anywhere else we could use this multi-year authority?
Senator, I'll start by saying that earlier there was a question around launch and the capacity associated with launch, and we're putting a lot of demand on our launch capacity. That would be one area that I would look at to not only multi-year procurement, but just any incentives that we can do to attract more businesses to go into our launch, to expand our launch capacity. That's consistent with how it's been done across the department and other programs. It's essentially a capacity incentive for businesses to invest in infrastructure and capital equipment to do that. And then certainly as we proliferate the architectures, we have to produce more satellites. Those are elements that perhaps these models would apply. And if confirmed, I will look at all of those areas to ensure that we have the right capacity to deliver and to include and to use any tool available at our disposal, including multi-year procurements.
Thank you very much. Mr. O'Malley.
Thank you, Senator. Multi-year procurement is a powerful tool that the department is currently using, thanks to the Congress, to send a stronger demand signal to industry. I also think about the transition to the program acquisition executive and the service acquisition executive, giving them the authority that they need to not focus on necessarily isolated programs, but broader capability portfolios. And so multi-year procurement is certainly a tool in the toolbox, and it has been utilized. It's continuing to be utilized, and we thank the Congress for it.
Thanks. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Budd. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses. Just a point in response to Senator Sullivan, and he and I chatted as he was leaving. Not all supplementals are exactly the same. And one of the issues that we're sort of grappling with, and this is no surprise, I suspect, to the witnesses or folks watching with the supplemental is on top of a presidential budget request that increases the Pentagon's budget by 40% in 1 year. And so we're sort of grappling with the 40% in 1 year increase and then the supplemental on top of it. And I think it's natural as exercising oversight to see, well, if we're going to increase the defense budget by that much, do you need a supplemental too? Or can the priorities in the supplemental be folded in? And Mr. Hurst, my questions to you are sort of, I want to do some budget math with you, and you're going to be better at this than me, so I want you to correct me if I get anything wrong. Last year, we passed a reconciliation bill, and in that reconciliation bill, we provided $153 billion for DOD. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
And your testimony, I think, is consistent with this, that a bunch of that $153 billion has not been obligated. The records that we got from the Pentagon that were current through July 2 suggest that $68 billion has been obligated, but $89 billion of it has not been obligated. Does that sound generally accurate to you?
Based on the number you gave, Senator, but I do expect that number to continue to increase through the fiscal year.
Well, here's what interests me. So we did a reconciliation bill last year, and $89 billion of that to DOD is still unobligated. And so then I thought, $89 billion, that is a number that's remarkably similar to another number. The administration has sent us a supplemental request for $87 billion. Now, not all of that $87 billion is for the DOD. $67 billion is for the DOD. Other portions of the request, for example, aid to farmers who have been hurt by tariffs. Okay, but set that aside. We have $89 billion unobligated to the DOD from the reconciliation bill, and the administration is asking us for $67 billion in a supplemental that they recently delivered to us. So here's the question that I really want to get to, and I don't know whether in your current role or in your past role were you grappling with this. Has the Pentagon scrubbed the priorities that make up that $67 billion in the supplemental? So for example, $21 billion is munitions. Have you scrubbed those priorities and then looked at the unobligated $89 billion and said, wow, we already have money that we could use to do things that we think are necessitated in the supplemental request? Do you know whether that's been done?
Senator, I think it'd be best to maybe it'd be best to go do this as a QFR and make sure we give you a line by line that compares what's left in OBA, One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and then the supplemental request. But I would suggest to you that the $89 billion that Congress provided to us through OBA that's not obligated is likely for different capabilities than what's being requested in the supplemental.
I suspect that it is, and yet we do act according to priorities. And so, we're hearing that this supplemental is needed. Let's just use the munitions. Of the $67 billion, $21 billion is for munitions in the supplemental. That is a dire need to replenish munitions stock. It may be that there are things that were in the reconciliation bill last year that are unobligated priorities that are important but aren't so urgent. And each priority, you can give it an importance ranking, and each priority you can give it an urgency ranking. And I got to believe that some of this $67 billion in the supplemental is stuff that would match up with some of the line items in the unspent, unobligated money from last year. And we wouldn't be doing our oversight job if we were to just kind of, forget about the $89 billion that still hadn't been obligated and say we got to rubber stamp the 67. We ought to be looking to see whether we can accomplish some of the objectives with money that is already at the department that hasn't been obligated. And the last thing I'll say on this same topic is, we've also been told that there may need to be a reconciliation bill. So, and you and I chatted about this in my office. It's been a little complicated this year because there was an appropriations request increasing by 40% last year's appropriated amount. And there is a supplemental request, and then there's also a suggestion that there needs to be a reconciliation request. To vote on door number 2, and when I'm not exactly sure what's behind door number 1 and door number 3, we really need to look at this all together. So my hope is, just going back to all of you, is take a look at the unobligated $89 billion and take a look at what you're asking for with the $67 billion in the supplemental request and see if there's dollars you already have that would enable you to accomplish objectives that have an immediate urgency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. And this concludes today's hearing. I want to thank our witnesses and their testimony. I want to thank all of the families who are present in support of their family members. For information of members, question for the record will be due to the committee within 2 business days of the conclusion of this hearing, which is right now. And we are adjourned.